Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Josh Doring, Chris Brown, they are here with me. J.J. Watt, Carson Wentz. J.J. Watt officially looking for a new home. It seems like Carson Wentz will be on his way to a new home sometime in the very near future. So let's talk destinations. Let's talk fit. Let's talk desired destinations from a purely opinion perspective and just personal desires. We'll start with J.J. Watt, though. Josh, where does J.J. Watt fit in, and where would you like to see him go? Okay. No. Mm-hmm. Which is a good thing. You don't need right, because you don't need a defense to have to depend on J.J. Watt anymore. Mm-hmm. 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 I like it. Chris, what do you got?
There is a hurdle with them with potentially with cap space, and but it seems like these are things that teams can sort of, if they're really committed to that player, they'll figure it out. Like they'll find a way if they need to. So that's a team that everybody talked about, and I think it does make sense. But I'm going to throw out an interesting one that I saw out there, sort of an out there proposal, and that's the Bills. I actually kind of like this fit a good bit. Obviously, Watt seems very interested in chasing a ring, or not chasing a ring, being on a competitive team. Being on a team with real Super Bowl hopes. Buffalo obviously provides one of the best chances of that. He would create quite a tandem with Jerry Hughes. The fan base would welcome him in. There looks like, from what I've read, there are plenty of, or at least a couple of ways this team could relatively easily free up the cap space. Sean McDermott's style, his defensive-minded, approach, would make Watt a good fit there. I think that would be an interesting fit. That's kind of what I want to see, just because I think it would be really interesting.
I got criteria for J.J. Watt.
Okay.
For the team that J.J. Watt goes to.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be a contender, and I want them to value defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to value defense, not necessarily because he can't excel on a team that didn't play defense well last year, but as I mentioned a moment ago, I want J.J. Watt to not be the most important player on somebody's defense all of a sudden, because 32-year-old J.J. Watt is not the guy that you need to be the most important player on your defense, because he's 32, and also because we all love J.J. Watt, but the guy can't stay on the field. Hasn't been able to stay on the field for several years now.
He did it this year, to his credit. In the 1 year, it didn't
Right.
matter, unfortunately.
Right. I mean,
But
but the point is still the same, is that we're at a point in J.J. Watt's career where we can't depend on him to play 17, 16 football games every year. He is capable of it still, yes, but I want him to go to a place where he enhances the defense, not becomes the focal point of it. Yep. And I also want him to be a contender, which is why, Pittsburgh is cool. Pittsburgh would be a cool story, having all three of those brothers on the same team, having him on the same, in the same front seven as TJ Watt. Right. If JJ Watt is good and you also have TJ Watt, who got the Defensive Player of the Year just absolutely robbed from him. That's scary. Now, are the Steelers really a true contender because of the shortcomings on the other side of the football? I don't know, but at least I feel like that would fit. He would be happy there, and at least we're going into next season talking about the Steelers as at least having some part to play in the way that the AFC shakes up, which I think is good. Where I would like him to go is either Tampa Bay or Green Bay. Tampa Bay would be really interesting because that's the epitome, I feel like, of enhancing a defense, not being the focal point of a defense.
It's almost not fair.
Right, it's almost not fair. It should almost be illegal with what the guys that they currently have on that deal, whether it's Devin White, Levante David, Shaquille Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul. It's absolutely ridiculous, all the names that are on that defense. But I think Tampa Bay is a really nice. Obviously, they just won a Super Bowl, but there's a combination of they're going to hang their hat on the defensive end, at least to as much as you can, with Tom Brady on, under center. Tom Brady being on your football team immediately makes you a contender, and then you put the weapons around him that he has on both sides of the football. They're going to be a part of the conversation next year again, and the same can be said for the Packers. The Packers the Packers weren't bad on the defensive side of the football, but could use another edge rusher to sort of solidify that side of the football. But I would love for him to go to a place that has a winning culture with an elite quarterback that's trying to win a Super Bowl again next year, and Tampa Bay and Green Bay both fit those bills.
I'm also going to throw this out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the teams we mentioned is, unless my geography is way off, significantly closer to his wife than the rest of them. And that is the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Does that actually matter? I don't know, because he was playing in Houston and she got traded to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, not that that's going to be the factor. But I would not be surprised if the Bears somehow get into this conversation, if for no other reason than he just posted he is in Chicago, or at least was this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he set up base because that's where his wife is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of being, one state away in Wisconsin, that probably helps in that regard. Just throwing that one out there.
Sure.
There's part of me that would just be upset if he joined the Buccaneers.
But at the same time, I feel I want J.J. Watt to be on an important football team.
Right.
And
I wouldn't blame him per se. It would just be, I would just be rooting for them not to be able to build this into a dynasty, I think.
Well, Brady's 43, so the dynasty probably only lasts 4 years, if that long. So it's not like it's Mahomes.
Right. We don't need to get into this now. But also, if you got that roster and you're a quarterback, there could be a quarterback ready to inherit that may not be.
Sure.
But that's not J.J. Watt's problem. J.J.
Right.
Watt to do what's best for J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I find it hard to blame. I find it I almost find it hard to even be upset about it when J.J. Watt's just been sort of stripped of every chance of real success the last few years in Houston.
Yep.
I'm very much in the. It's a similar way I feel to about Deshaun Watson, that it's just a shame that Deshaun Watson is on a football team right now that could not be more irrelevant from an actual on the field perspective, right? Watson by most statistics was the best quarterback in the NFL, but his team was horrible. Those two things shouldn't coexist. And the same can be said for J.J. Watt, especially if he's going to be able to stay on the field. Him being a defensive presence like that and it just not mattering in the scope of the NFL is a shame, to be honest with you, because it would be fun to see J.J. Watt actually play an important football game.
Yeah. It's just a personal preference thing.
Sure.
Not a fit thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Let's do Wentz. Mr. Brown, where should Wentz go? Where would you like to see Wentz go?
Yeah, for me, I kept reading about, I read about this, I thought about it, I looked at some different rosters and situations, and this is one where, like, I thought about the Bears. Could they do something kind of, I think it would be kind of desperate if they did that kind of thing, that kind of move. I think it would be a desperation move. Mm-hmm. The Patriots would be a little bit out there. There's just so many question marks with them and where their offense is, and can they get the weapons around them? For me, it all comes down to one team, and I'm not saying that it has to be this team or that
it does have to be this team. It does have to be this team. Yeah.
Okay, the Colts.
The Colts. It does have to be
right. Okay. The more and more I read about this, the more and more I think about this, the more and more it makes sense. Right. This is a team that can afford to take on his contract. There were estimated at least a few days ago, I don't know what situations now, to have like the second most cap space among any NFL team.
Up there.
And his contract's not that bad. It's bad for the Eagles because they're on the
right.
What's the phrase I'm looking for? On the book. They owe him a bunch of money regardless. They're going to take a huge cap hit if they trade him. Mm-hmm. That's not anybody else's problem. The contract is absolutely doable, especially for the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And of course, there's the Frank Reich connection. He had most of his success in Philadelphia was with Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator. I think there's just a real chance that Reich and that system could help rein in some of Carson Wentz's struggles, his inconsistency, get him in spots where he can feel comfortable, because that I think is going to be right. That's the biggest key in him turning it around. I feel like more than anything is just finding a situation and getting him in a spot where he feels comfortable, because clearly and comfortable can take many forms. I mean, organizationally, off the field, but also just on the field, comfortable in situations, because he just has seemed so shaky, so, not sure what he's doing. Get him in a spot where he feels like he can do what he needs to do and where he's capable of sort of tapping into all his potential. The Colts are a team that has an efficient running game, with Jonathan Taylor now. I see this making a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but part of me kind of wonders at this point, I'm wondering at this point in the game, if the Colts had the best offer out, like there's clearly these two teams have talked Carson Wentz. We know that based on reports. It sounds like from what I saw something this morning, his preference, Carson Wentz's preference, would actually be to play in Indy, according to this report that I'm seeing here. But at this point, you have to wonder, why hasn't it been done then? If the Colts had the best offer, or they were satisfying what Philadelphia wanted, the deal would be done. So part of me wonders, what is the holdup? And maybe there isn't. Maybe it'll, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But is there some sort of holdup here? What does that mean? I don't see the Colts being a team that's going to overpay more than they think he's worth. They're not going to panic. I could see some of the teams panicking. Holdup. That's probably the holdup, right? As the Colts are not going to be in a position where they're like, okay, fine, whatever it takes, we'll add on these extra things to get it done. They're not going to panic. So some other team in the meantime sweep in and say, well, you know what, we're going to panic. They're not going to say we're going to panic, but they're going to panic. Some other teams say, fine, we'll give you that extra two things, extra draft pick, extra this, extra that, before the Colts, is some team going to do that before, the Colts and the Eagles get something figured out? So yeah, that's my thought. That's kind of where I want it to be. That's also kind of where I see the best fit at this point.
Well, here's the secret. You know why they're not freaking out to get Carson Wentz? Because Carson Wentz isn't worth the freak out. Not even a little bit.
Right. Oh, you shouldn't.
Now, if you get the 13-3 regular season version of Carson Wentz, then that guy is, especially if you can convince yourself that Frank Reich was the reason why, then we're getting closer to the threshold of maybe overpaying for him slightly to get him to Indy. But if we're talking about the version of Carson Wentz we've gotten the last couple of years, he's not worth the freak out, right? So that's part of the hurdle that the Eagles are going to have to overcome, is trying to convince a team that he's worth more than he actually is, at least right now. So I had criteria for Wentz too. My criteria for Wentz was, essentially, it boils down to not the end-all, be-all of the football team. What I mean by that is, right, and well-rounded football teams depend on more things than just their quarterback. But I think it's important, for at least for me, for Wentz to go somewhere where he's not immediately asked to be the person solely responsible for that team's success. And I think Indianapolis fits that bill. I think right. The reason why which quarterback goes to Indianapolis is so intriguing is because they got the pieces everywhere else. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. They have one of a very good rising running back in Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to continue to pat myself on the back about that one. I've been on that dude. Just go get the guy who knows how to run the football. They got Jonathan Taylor. They've got guys, they've got skill players like T.Y. Hilton. I think Michael Pittman Jr. will continue to get better. And when you add all of those pieces that are already there with the offensive line, I think is it fair to say that Phillip Rivers was better this year than we thought he would be?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he got there. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with the fact that because it's Frank Reich, because it's that offensive line, because it's Jonathan Taylor having a really good season, because it's the guys that that were around him, right? And then you got a defense that is a Super Bowl quality defense, right? You could put that defense on any team that on the other side of the football you feel like has the pieces to win a Super Bowl on the offensive side of things and have a Super Bowl contender. So that's part of why, at least, right, whether it's Deshaun Watson, I saw an edit with Russell Wilson in a Indianapolis Colts jersey over the weekend. If they get a good quarterback in there, the Colts are immediately Super Bowl contenders, at least in my mind. And that's why this is so interesting. And I think it's a perfect combination for Wentz of familiarity with Reich, not having all the weight on his shoulders, new spot in general, which I think is the biggest part, is that it's not in Philadelphia, and then a unit on the other side of the football that is going to take some pressure off of you there. I think the Bears are interesting for a similar reason. I really want him to not go to the Patriots because I don't think he and Bill Belichick would work well together. And I also, the Patriots just don't have any interest in putting real weapons around their quarterback. Right. And I want Carson Wentz to go somewhere where weapons are already established. So I think that the best fit is Indy. I want him to go to Indy. Maybe not more than I want to see like Deshaun Watson go to Indy, but in the conversation of Wentz in particular, I like Indy a lot. Josh, what about you?
And here's the other thing. And by the way, the phrase I was looking for was on the hook. I don't know.
On the hook, okay.
They're on the hook for all this money,
right?
Because of the way that his contract is structured, and
right?
All that the Colts or anybody else wouldn't be,
right?
Yeah, of course, it's trying to set him up for success and the familiarity, but also a lot of this is just, can you get him into a spot where he feels comfortable and confident?
Right.
I don't want him in Chicago.
And that's the other part of it too. That's the other part of it too. Yeah,
right. Yeah. I don't think Matt Nagy can get him confident because clearly there's sort of this cause and effect up and down pattern with Wentz. Mm-hmm. That he is at his best when he feels supported and he feels confident. And for good or bad, however you feel about that, if you're going in on Carson Wentz, that is part of the equation that you have to be aware of. Mm-hmm. That the Eagles, I feel like, messed up. And that's part of why I've continued to back Wentz to a degree, despite how bad he was, is that they kept sending these mixed messages and they kept drafting Jalen Hurts. All that does is make Carson Wentz less confident and doubt you more. But that's neither here nor there.
Which might be a character flaw on Carson Wentz's side of things, but still the reality of the situation.
If you're taking Wentz, though, this is who Wentz is. Mm-hmm. It's become pretty clear. You can feel how you want about it, whether you want to inherit or take on a quarterback that has that history. That's up to you. But if you pull the trigger, that's what you're getting.
Right.
I don't want that Matt Nagy and the Bears trying to be the team to fix that. And I don't want Belichick and the Patriots trying to be the team to fix that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I want Frank Reich, A, because it's Frank Reich, and B, because it's Frank Reich, Carson Wentz's former coach, trying to fix that.
For sure.
And also they just brought in Press Taylor, who Carson Wentz is a big fan of, to help with that offense. This is as close as you're going to get to his coaching staff when he was at his best.
Uh-huh.
And clearly he was very confident and comfortable with that. So there's that. I'm right there with both of you. I want him to go to the Colts. I think the best fit is the Colts. Whether it's the best idea for the Colts is a different conversation, especially if you can pry Deshaun Watson out of there. But other than that, you're running out of options here.
Yep.
The other spot.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right.
No, I thought you were done. Go ahead, please.
The other spot that I think is interesting for those reasons is San Francisco.
I don't think they're gonna give up. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna do it.
I'm just messing with you. Tell us why though.
Well,
yeah.
You do the Jared Goff, Matt Stafford trade. You send Garoppolo to Philly, who will have cap space once they purge their roster in the way that they're about to. And of course, you've got a young quarterback on a rookie deal. So you put Garoppolo in there to at least give Hurts some competition. And from Wentz's perspective, because that's ultimately what we're talking about here, that's Kyle Shanahan, and that's a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel comfortable with Kyle Shanahan trying to be the guy to fix, quote unquote, fix Wentz, get his confidence back, whatever you want to frame it. Because Kyle Shanahan is a terrific offensive mind.
Yep.
If it's not going to be Reich in that personal connection, Shanahan is right there on my other list of guys I would want Wentz working with at this point. And it's a good team that could use an upgraded quarterback, which Wentz gives you if you get him back to peak performance. And
I think there's just a culture. Like the 49ers have sneakily been one of the most successful teams in the NFL the last 5-6 years. When I think most successful teams in the NFL over that handful of years, the Niners aren't immediately what I think about, but they are. And I think a culture fit, familiarity, confidence, all of it sort of ties into culture. And like, there's not a better culture in the NFL right now, at least from there are better winning cultures, quote unquote, in the NFL right now than what's in Indianapolis. But between Chris Ballard and Frank Reich and the Ursays, there aren't as many places that do it right. There aren't very many places that do it right like the Colts do it right. And Wentz is just the type of guy that he's going to excel in the places that do it right. And both in Indy certainly fits that bill. The Niners fit that bill. That's an intriguing one as well. I also, depending on who you ask, I'm not sure Wentz is an upgrade from Garoppolo.
Depends on what Wentz you're getting.
Right.
Even if it depends, you can also argue that it doesn't matter which Wentz you're getting because Garoppolo's gone to a Super Bowl and Carson Wentz hasn't.
Carson Wentz would have won a Super Bowl with the roster Jimmy Garoppolo had.
Sure.
Garoppolo would have had no chance of, and I'll go back to 2019 because I think people just forget about this. There is no way in the world the Eagles make the playoffs if Garoppolo's their quarterback. None.
Okay. We're trading Carson Wentz because he's been such a headache for the Philadelphia Eagles, and you still go to bat for him like he's the return of the savior.
Well, it depends on if you're getting 2019 or if you're.
Well, I don't want to have to say that. Since Garoppolo's been a starting quarterback, you know exactly what you're getting from Garoppolo.
Right. Which is why I'm saying it completely depends on the ones you're getting. If you're confident you can fix him, he's absolutely an upgrade. If you're not confident, I'm going with Garoppolo.
Right, which is why. Right, but the Niners don't have a quarterback issue to solve. Why would you take that risk if you don't need to take that risk? The Colts need a real quarterback.
Right. Oh, I agree. Yeah. I'm just saying if they want to get ambitious and feel like they can, sort of what the Rams did and say, we can't get to where we want to be with this roster. You don't have many now, Deshaun Watson would be option A.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you can't, if I'm assuming Watson's not available though,
which is
there aren't a lot of other places to upgrade.
Sure.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Wentz could be an upgrade.
Sure.
Right. Could chase that wild card. Yeah. Right.
I just feel like he's got to prove a lot to be better than Garoppolo ultimately.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe and it also would depend on, is that trade just straight up one for the other? Because I'm not giving up anything for Wentz if I also have to give you Garoppolo. But
And Chris, this goes back to your question of why hasn't this happened yet. I think it's because the Eagles are holding out, hoping they're going to get something that they shouldn't.
Right.
Probably, yeah.
They will have to be thrilled if they end up getting a first or this Matthew Stafford-like package, apparently, that they want.
Yeah.
They put themselves in this position, and also Wentz's horrible season put them in this position.
Right.
But by deciding that they were going to move off of him at this point, instead of trying to double down on him,
right, you're selling
you're
low.
essentially asking somebody to take this contract on.
Right.
Right.
Nobody's going to look at you, and particularly Chris Ballard, and say, yeah, we'll do that, and we'll say thank you for it.
Right.
No, you're going to thank us for it.
Right.
They have no leverage.
Which is a weird...
And he doesn't want to be there.
Right. There's literally no... They have no leverage, even though they need all of it.
Right.
That's tough.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it will really be interesting to see if that results in him not going anywhere. Like, how much are they... How married are they to getting that deal? Or is it do you just get to a point where it's like, okay, fine, we can't have this guy on our team anymore, just take him.
You got to play the game and see if somebody will bite, and then I have to. I am confident the asking price is going to come down, and this will happen, unless Wentz changes his mind and is okay to stay.
Which I don't see happening either.
I don't either.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take 60 seconds, come back with winners and losers real quick. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.